Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning for our clusters talk. I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit of interest in this morning's discussion. We're going to be discussing innovation through integration, how to create and engage a meta cluster. I know of interest to many of you managing clusters who want to take it to the next level. So we'll be talking about that. As always, we will start with news from the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. Then Marek Bazor, who will give us a brief overview on meta clustering, what it's all about, why it is helpful, and what steps you might want to consider. We'll then hear about the Interregional Innovation Investments, or the 3I's instrument, from Eric Koch in the European Commission, before moving on to our panel debate. As always, with the panel debate, we will use Slido to launch the polls. Now, you'll be able to scan the QR code that we will show on your screen to answer those polls and to give us a sense of what you're feeling about the discussion. It'll be really useful to our speakers to hear from you so that we feel it's a really involved discussion. But of course, you can use the Zoom function of Q&A. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. As always, you can use the chat function to say hello, and we will use it also to share links and to provide additional information. But if it's a specific question for the panel, do use the Q&A function. I'll try to keep an eye on both, but the Q&A questions will definitely be put to our panel. If you want to speak, we also encourage that. You can use the function to click raise hand, and we'll then invite you to turn on your camera if you want, or just your microphone if you prefer, and to ask a question of our panel or add something that you feel is of interest. You should note, if you do that, of course, that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be published on the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, but that's also useful for you as well to go back if you want to check information that you might have missed as we go through our discussions this morning. With that, I will turn over to Nina Hoffman to give us the latest news from the ECCP. Nina, tell us what's the latest, what's happening that we should look out for.
Many thanks, Jennifer, and good morning to everybody. This topic today is also a preparation for the European Cluster Conference, which will take place on the 7th and 8th of May in Brussels at the Square, to which you're, of course, most warmly invited. We will discuss at the conference the green transition, digital transition, and building resilience through the key drivers of skills, funding, and technology. Registration is still open this week, so if you haven't done it yet, please register on the European Cluster Conference 2024.eu and register your interest to come to Brussels and to take part in the European Cluster Conference this year. There's also a matchmaking next to the Cluster Conference, which will take place on the 8th at the venue directly. So as it's part of the agenda, you can see it when you go to the Cluster Conference website. For hours here, you can look into finding new potential business partners, all stages of the value chain, and look for future project partners or for new products or services for your organization. So have a look at the matchmaking that is taking place within the Cluster Conference. If you're interested, you can also register when registering for the conference itself. We invite you to come to the Clusters Meet Regions. That's the next event in that series that we have. And this is taking place in Graz in Austria on the 18th and 19th of June. It has the theme tradition reinvented, and we're looking how clusters can spearhead transformative shifts to climate neutral and a digital future, aligning with European sustainability goals. There's also a matchmaking part of this event. You can find the agenda and the registration on the link that we put in the chat to this Clusters Meet Region event in Austria. And if you're specifically looking for matchmaking opportunities internationally, there are two events happening in June as well. One is the EU-Taiwan matchmaking, which will take place in Berlin on the 10th until the 12th of June, with around 80 companies and trade organizations coming from Taiwan. Focus areas are ICT, digital industries, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, also smart mobility, and looking into sustainability and circularity, as well as smart healthcare and smart cities. The first cutoff date is tomorrow on the 25th of April, so register for that so that you're in the first cutoff date tomorrow. And if your companies or anyone interested in your network, please let them know about the event. The same goes for the matchmaking that is taking place with the SouthMed partners, so the Southern Mediterranean, which will take place in Frankfurt, similar dates on the 11th until the 13th of June. And here we'll bring together EU and SouthMed countries. You see the list here in the screen, with the focus areas on green tech, digital, manufacturing and mechanical engineering, as well as pharma and biotech. The same cutoff date, so tomorrow is the first one, 25th of April. Register if you're interested in meeting people from the SouthMed countries and new potential business partners. And what is also happening this week is Hannover Messe, which is taking place in Germany as well. And until the 26th, the Commission has a packed program at the trade fair, and it is streamed live, which is particularly interesting because there's a session on clusters tomorrow happening at 10:30. Energy transformation, great achievements, and role of clusters, with cluster representatives from Germany and other countries, as well as Mark Pschorr from the European Commission leading the panel. So stream is online with the link in the chat, and you can follow this event from your computer if you cannot make it to Hanover. And with that, I give back to you, Jennifer, and directly to Marek, who will introduce us to today as well.
Indeed, Nina, no need to wait until watching at Messe tomorrow to hear from Marek, team leader of cluster policy in DG Grow with the European Commission. Marek, as always, I'm sure you've got some interesting information for us, and naturally we will be sharing the link in the stream as well. So over to you to hear about meta clustering, our topic for today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Nina, and welcome everyone for this session today. I will give you a bit of introduction of the policy context. As you know, we are just before the European elections. The new commission is coming. There will be next year starting work on the new multi-annual financial framework. So I would like you to raise awareness of some policy developments and latest policy documents, which can be very interesting for you to know about. I mean, I want to refer to our DG Grow, European Commission, the annual single market report and the competitiveness report. I want to draw your attention to the communication on the clean transition dialogues, which was published as well at the beginning of April. I would like to draw attention to the Council conclusion of the 17th, 18th of April, and I want to draw your attention to the latest LETTA report on the single market, which was published last week. Why I'm mentioning all of this? Because all of these documents actually underline the importance of single market and the importance of deepening single market for industrial competitiveness of the EU. Having said so, if we take into consideration that we have 1,500 cluster organizations on our European cluster collaboration platform, which actually from our analysis point of view, we know that there are 3,000 nodes. So some we don't have in some areas cluster organizations, which could facilitate the process. We know as well that we have 440 million customers, more than 20 million SMEs, and this all operating in the single market. So a simple conclusion out of this is that we need to bring clusters and these nodes together. And I'm not going to go into definition of meta cluster. I think in the literature and among researchers, there's still way to work to do on this. I want to go on the practicalities. It's basically about connecting dots and really having the opportunity to exploit the single market that we have, and our clusters to play a role in this. having said so, we will have the European Cluster Conference in 2 weeks. We have two main high-level panels at the very beginning, and one is exactly on how clusters can help build new and reshaping existing value chains, and the second on having clusters as hotspots of investments. And I want to mention as well that we've been like kind of starting to build the connection between different clusters, and today even you will hear some results of this EU action, which led as well to create associations, meta clusters, be it on the sectoral level. I want to mention the ones which I always given as example: Silicon Europe or European Airspace Cluster Partnerships or European Automotive Cluster Network or the European Network of Maritime Clusters or Council of Bioregions. These are the most visible. And we have launched, as you know, the instrument called Euroclusters, which was supposed to really help and incentivize clusters to come together and ultimately create meta cluster at EU level. We have 30 Euro clusters, which is financed from the single market program. We have it ranges from rural tourism, the naval defense, biomedicine, sustainable trans mobility. It was all very much bottom up. We have as well years before already started with the European from COSME on international the programs, the projects on internationalizations, partnerships for internationalization, on excellence, and even in Horizon InnoSup 1. So right now we want to continue and further probably accelerate given the policy development at the EU. So we have a range of instruments, but the only directly supporting clusters is Euroclusters. But we have as well, and let me just mention some: Vanguard Initiative, Innovate, European Innovation Ecosystems from Horizon, EIT, Regional Innovation Scheme. We have partnerships for regional innovations, Horizon Europe partnerships. We have some actions in Invest EU, European Industrial Alliances, Interreg B, transnational. Everywhere clusters can play a role, but it's not dedicated as in Euroclusters. And we have as well launched the Interregional Innovation Investment under European Regional Development Fund as an instrument where clusters actually play a very active and dynamic role. And this is, I think, a good opportunity to give you the highlights from this action, how it is developing. And I use this occasion now to pass to Eric, who is from a colleague who is developing this instrument in our executive agency. Eric, up to you. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and I hope you can hear me. If you can put the first slide, please. So let me get you through 5 minutes or 10 slides, doing a major pitch kind of presentation, and just give food for thought for the pen as well. Marek mentioned the directly, let's say, coordinated actions from Brussels and directly funded, like Eurocluster as well. There's also the Regional Innovation Investment Instrument, and then it's you see on the slide here, it's the first time that since 2021 it actually used cohesion policy to implement a program and instrument directly from Brussels, and you see where we're coming from. A cohesion policy is for us the main topic. Target all regions. Obviously, you see the colorful map. That's the idea is obviously to help Western regions to catch up and to create competitiveness, which is also at the heart of the cluster. Next slide, please. Which shows the a little bit the situation where we are. If you look at that from let's say from the real budget perspective, it's a drop in the ocean. Talking about 500 million euros for but this is really a pilot we try to bring forward and to show that we can increase something together between different regions outside their own country. Next slide, please. Where we come to the heart of the I3. Here we have the elements interregional innovation investments. Interregional, obviously, this is not new. That's clear. There's Interact and similar initiatives. But here, in the interregional, we're really trying to focus on the smart specialization strengths in each region and bring various regions from different countries together with a focus on industry, obviously. In terms of innovation, there is the objective to be close to the market. Those projects that we are funding are close to commercialization. We are funding projects TRL 6 to 9. We are targeting certain challenges, although the instruments overall are very wide bottom up. So we accept, as you see, very broad topics. And we are focused on investments, meaning that we are focusing on small businesses mainly. We are trying to bring supply and demand together in projects and having to create value chains or integrate this in value chains. Next slide, please, which shows a little bit where we're coming from. Let's say capacity building and piloting phase, we are now getting speed and up to speed with these projects that are now being implemented and ready for demonstration to scale up. Two different strands. Strand 1 focused on the investments, and strand 2, cap 2B, it's called, focusing more on the capacity building. There is also 2A. Both the 1 and 2A are investments, but the 2A is more focused on less regions. Although less regions play a role for all strands. We will also have the support facility now being starting in May to help us understand better the impact of I3 and help also authorities, smart specialization authorities, and applicants to apply for the wide. Next slide, please, which shows the 3 stands and basically the challenges that are already mentioned. Nothing more to say here, and they are broadly in line of the main new challenges. Next slide, please. Just a quick overview of the kinds of activities we fund, including, as I said, starting from demonstration and so testing in real environment, test beds, post finance per se, but working with prototypes and then commercialization activities. Next slide, please. Which is it shows also the role that clusters can play, because we are targeting all types of ecosystem players, including clusters, endorsed ideally by their smart specialization authority. And so we encourage you. Next slide to show you that there was the call in 2023 with more than 30 million per strand, and now we are targeting 4 to go even more, 6 million euros overall for the investment calls, and here we are June, closing in December. I cannot want to know in the middle of the drafting of the call documents, but you'll hear more from us also, because we're trying to make these documents easier accessible, also to faster organizations, focus perhaps a bit more even on less developed regions, and making certain things clear what we expect from applicants in terms of and scale up. And the last slide, oh no, there are 2 more, but this is just to give you an overview of the 2 kinds of projects we currently support. Very varied, as you see, and we have a rich let's say portfolio of projects and various challenges. And on the last slide, I would like to mention these thematic platforms, the smart specialization thematic platforms have been relaunched with a new community of practice that you are mostly all aware of, where cluster innovations are main actors, and which we also use not only to, let's say, to disseminate information from my 3 projects, but also to help applicants to find partners and apply for the instrument. Thank you for that, and I'll take more questions for discussions.
Thank you, Eric. Indeed, we may have questions for you. Your slides were fascinating, and I could hear most of what you were saying, but some was a little bit fuzzy, so we may need to ask you for some clarifications. Perhaps we'll get you to come back into our panel and just repeat a little bit of your main messages again, just to make sure everyone gets them, because I think there were some sound issues. We will, however, move on now to our discussion point, but as I promised, we will be involving everyone. So you can go to slido.com on your browser or on your smartphone if you wish, and join by putting in the hashtag metaclustering, or with your smartphone, you can scan that QR code that you see there on the screen, and that will take you directly to our Slido polls. And we'll start the first one now, and we'll refer back to it, of course, during the discussion. But we're asking everyone, are you involved in a meta cluster? Just to get a sense of who's joining today. So yes, for some time, or not yet, or we're currently taking up meta clustering activities. I see straight away people are putting in their answers there, and so far, people haven't yet joined a meta cluster, but others also looking at joining them. So as well, that's at about 1/3 of people so far. So I'm sure we'll see that a little bit of an update on that over the course of our conversation. I think we still can allow a little bit more time for voting on that. Still very much, most people not yet joined, and only a small number have a lot of experience in meta clusters, which I guess is why everyone's here. Let's have a look at our second poll question, which is, what for you are the main benefits of meta clustering? We're going to let that be an open poll, or it's not a poll rather, it's a word cloud. So you should be able to write in with 1 or 2 words, try and funding. Okay, that's obviously the first thing that comes up very often in these discussions. And obviously, when you're working together with other clusters, it's going to be networking, synergies, collaboration, critical mass, and networking again becoming one of the big ones there. We will let that run in the background, that Slido, and we'll move on now to introducing our panel debatees for this section. So if our panel speakers could switch on their cameras, that would be great. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing everyone, but I'll begin by introducing you nonetheless. So we have Erasmia Dupinlop, Chairman of Silicon Europe, which is in the electronics sector. Also joining us today, Giovanni Scaramuzzo, who is Project Manager at Exco Richiera, which is representing an organization within the Eurocluster Creative EU. Monse Daban is President of the Council of European Bioregions. Thomas Rohr, Secretary General for the European Automotive Cluster Network, which is unsurprisingly in the automotive sector. And we have also joining us another speaker today, Maurizio Male, who is Project Manager at the Venetian cluster, and also looking into formalizing collaboration and looking towards a meta cluster. So thank you all very much indeed for joining us. Erasmia, let me start with you, and perhaps you could give us your response to that poll question, which was one of the main benefits of being in a meta cluster. Where do you see that being of huge value?
Yes. Hello, everyone, and I'm really thrilled to participate in this panel debate. Thank you so much for the invitation. And just maybe I can start by explaining what Silicon Europe Alliance is. So this is an electronic-based system meta cluster representing more than 2,500 companies and research institutions, and with the most advanced technology and expertise in all fields of the electronic software value chain, and serving and driving business in fields of applications such as smart mobility, smart living, smart health, and smart industry. And 12 renowned European clusters have joined Silicon Europe Alliance Meta Cluster. So the idea, the benefits of having a meta cluster is being able to accelerate, to foster cross-sectoral and cross-border cooperation and innovation, and helping our members to accelerate their R&D and business connection thanks to the cross-fertilization of our ecosystem. So basically, it's what Marek said, you know, this is about connecting dots and exploiting the single market.
Thank you. Giovanni, you're within the creatives sector. Tell me what there is the main benefit for you of being part of a meta cluster.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer, for this question. Actually, we are in the process of building a meta cluster because during the implementation of the project, we felt that by connecting dots, it would have brought great benefit for our associate, because as you see the map that Eric showed, we are in the orange part and we are really eager to get connected with the center of Europe, because you know, our companies, at least in the creative and cultural industries, are really small, and by connecting dots we can bridge gaps that are existing in the value chain in order to develop our competitiveness at global level. So this is the ambition that we are pursuing today.
And Monza, you're from the health and life sciences. Tell us about the same question from your perspective.
Well, yes, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to the ECCP for organizing this meeting today, because I think this is a very relevant subject, at least, and I think specifically, probably under my perspective, for the health sector, which is really complex sector and highly regulated. So the SMEs and the entities that are acting in this sector can benefit of these networking activities, of this expertise, this shared knowledge, this capacity to reach out at higher institutions and have this dialogue with the society, with their cluster members, but also with those policymakers that probably make some of those regulations in place. So for us, it's very important. This network is a formal network of bioregions, of cluster organizations that are covering a broad ecosystem, each of them of academia, hospitals, investors, SMEs, larger companies, pharma companies, digital health. So this is really complex. For us, this is an extremely useful instrument to be connected, to generate trust, to work on these areas that Marek often refers to, which are very important for Europe, which is resilience, which is reindustrialization, which is internationalization. So all those areas are very well connected thanks to an organization like the Council of European Bioregions. We have some members today connected, I'm sure. So that's what we do. And we also work some of those areas with special interest groups. Everybody is invited to learn how we treat these extremely important aspects for our members and for the European competitiveness as a whole. So I think this is a very relevant subject, and thank you for inviting me to share it.
Thank you indeed. It's a very complex area, as you say, and we do invite, if you have any members, if you're joining and any attendees, do feel free to get involved in the discussion and ask questions either in the chat or the Q&A function as well. Thomas, automotive, no less complex. Give us your perspective on the benefits of these meta clusters, what it brings. Obviously networking, but even beyond that.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and thank you very much to the European Cluster Collaboration Platform for inviting me. So just a few words about the EACN, so European Automotive Cluster Network. We today have 31 members, so a huge cluster, a meta cluster, covering countries from Portugal to Ukraine, from Finland to Italy. So more or less whole Europe is covered from 15 countries. We are focusing on, let's say, internal support to our members. That is a decision for the meta cluster, and that runs through a lot of information exchange, best practice exchange, support to members for finding partners in projects, or even promoting activities from projects run by partners. And I think this is mainly the best or the biggest added value for the members today. Everything's striking to boost cluster excellence for the members somehow by learning from the others. We have very different kind of cluster organizations and with very different problems and very different solutions. And so this is a mutual learning process, which is quite interesting.
Maurizio, let me turn to you because I understand you're already managing a Eurocluster, but looking to formalize the collaboration into a meta cluster. What's driving that? What do you see are going to be the benefits from that?
Well, we see the benefits are great benefits for existing clusters because we are putting together European clusters that until now they were working more at regional level, and now they are raising up to a higher level, thinking of European network of clusters in the tourism sector. In our case, it is a benefit also for small SMEs, small enterprises, very small enterprises. So we are going from a very high level at European level with a network of stakeholders and network of clusters, associations, federation of the rural tourism sectors, down to the very, very small nano enterprise working in a tourism sector that will receive services, benefits from this network. And we see a very good reaction and very high interest by enterprises in being in such a network, because of course they are linked to their local territory, but they are open to innovation and open to receive news and services from different areas. So we are bringing together different experiences, and this is enriching the whole network and enriching the single SMEs that we are supporting.
Well, let me come back, Thomas, let me come back to you and a few of the others in a moment. You mentioned about sharing best practice, but isn't this something that might happen naturally anyway? What is the add-on of kind of formalizing it through a meta cluster? Is it that there's more support? Is that it's more structured? Or is it just simply that there's a wider network?
Let's say those members who have several clusters in their country generally are also organized on a national level and cooperating on a national level. So I just think about Spain or France, where several clusters in the automotive sector exist, and they are collaborating, and in Poland too. But this is not the same as sharing information with partners from outside the national context. The national context is somehow similar for all the clusters in the country, and through this collaboration on a European level, they can learn also about different conditions, about different funding schemes from the countries, or so from the national governments, from different funding opportunities. And funding is always a big problem for clusters, for all of them. And so learning about what's done in some countries or not in others, how do they generate incomes through events or through services, which works in some countries but doesn't work in other countries. So this is very interesting to learn, or just one example, but to learn about these kind of differences, and then think about, okay, what can be done for my cluster when I take these ideas? Can I set them up also in a different context? So this is just one big advantage. The other advantage is going together on European funded projects. So we are together today, 2 EACN members are leading 2 Eurocluster projects, and with other members together. So we know each other, the network is functioning, the information exchanges is functioning. We're already discussing the new projects for the next call we expect to come we hope soon, to get the continuous funding for our members and for the SMEs, which are with the cascade funding behind. And so there is a very active exchange between different types of groups inside the members too. And I think there is a real added value to go outside national context.
Well, Montse, I'd like you to build on what Thomas is saying and really focus in on this European level, this international level, as sometimes we see even with clusters in Ukraine and so on. What is the added value, thinking outside of your home country, as it were?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, because it's very interesting building on what Thomas already said. Going to the benefits and the opportunities that you get working as a meta cluster, or in our case, a formal network of cluster organizations or bioregions, is that you work with your peers in a sense that you have the overview of what is happening in an ecosystem with all those challenges that you have at the local level, but that can be somehow related to the ones that you find in your peers, other cluster organizations. And then we can work together in this play field in which you address this talent funding, tech transfer or knowledge transfer, but also this sustainability in a big scale, etc. So you work with your peers, and we work with these special interest groups on some of those subjects. We can also, and then we just move upwards to our policy making, both at local, regional, national, and EU level, advising or providing content on how to provide or build the best policies for these regions that we are connecting somehow. And at the same time, we try to work on the impact we have on our ecosystems. So for example, some of our projects are about the pathway of change, how to transform with those big challenges like sustainability or like digitalization or working with health data, etc., on a local level. So when we bring that to a broader scale, we effectively see that this is pretty much the same challenges that we can find in other regions. So we can build a critical mass to provide the solutions and work on this, actually this pathway of change. We can provide this connection to a broader scale, like signing the pact for skills for the health industries, or working to identify which medicines are or which equipment is necessary for another pandemic. So this is the kind of things that we can, from our local, national, and regional perspective, go to a broader European perspective and international one. So I think this is what meta clusters or clusters part of larger networks actually do very well and are very instrumental in that regard.
Indeed, it's surprising how often we come up with lessons learned from the pandemic and trying to take the positives. Erasmia, as I think Montse pointed to or alluded to, sustainability, resilience are both very key things that we're looking for in Europe ahead as we plan for future crises, because they seem to be coming, as we would all say, very thick and fast in recent years. How does the electronic sector benefit to maybe use a meta cluster to build in what we're talking about in terms of resilience?
Oh, yes. Yes, the goal of the meta cluster is indeed to strengthen Europe's digital technology and microelectronics industry by facilitating, a relationship between our members. And maybe I'm going to go through concrete examples of what we are doing, because I think it's going to be to illustrate that. So, for example, we organize, Silicon Europe Alliance has acquired an expertise in open innovation, and we organize open innovation events, bringing together large corporation and SMEs and startup, and facilitating partnership and business opportunities. For example, we organized one Open Innovation Day with Thales in France, one with Boston Scientific in Belgium, one in in Germany with Infineon. So this is how we bring, you know, business opportunity within our ecosystems. We organize, you know, all our cluster major flagship events are open to Alliance cluster members, which is very important. And this is an opportunity of networking, of sharing, you know, news and opportunities to work together. And we, at the moment, are, you know, part of a Silicon Euro cluster, which aim at boosting the uptake of electronics solution by all businesses, while at the same time supporting our electronics companies adopt green processes. And there is this project provide support to SMEs via financial support, right? So this is how we work all together.
I'm smiling because financial support and funding are always the first things we see mentioned in our Slido. And before I come back to Giovanni and Maurizio, perhaps we could have a look at the final results of that first Slido word cloud. Is it possible to get a quick look at the Slido once again? If we can get that up on the screen, I think it might be useful. Perhaps. I know it takes a minute. Let's see. Right, networking there, as you can see, absolutely, but also best practice sharing, knowledge sharing, scaling up services to members, learning, network, collaboration, ecosystem, economies of scale, synergies, opportunities, efficiency, complementarity, experience, opening minds, and changing and exchanging points of view. All things that our panelists have mentioned. I'll take this opportunity now to launch the second question for our Slido poll that all the attendees, as well as our speakers, are welcome to answer, and in fact encouraged to answer. And that question is about the challenges. What are the challenges to meta-clustering activities? We've seen there the benefits, but of course, as much as we would like everything to be plain sailing, it's not always straightforward. We'll let that run in the background while I come back to my panelists. So I think, Giovanni, perhaps you can answer the question that we're asking of everyone here. What are the big challenges to a cluster, to set a meta cluster, to setting up a meta cluster? And is it in some way linked up to the benefits?
Yes, I think that probably the main obstacle is always the engagement of actors, of your associates, because you know they need to perceive the benefit of being in a network that is wider than the regional one. So sometimes it's difficult to get this engagement at regional level. Probably it's even bigger effort to get them engaged at international level, because there is always this, you know, the participation of associates is not balanced. So you need to make an extra effort to show example of how being part of a meta cluster can benefit the individual companies and individual actors within the value chain, because sometimes their perspective is at least in the creative and cultural industries, which is a very different sectors from automotive or microelectronics, because it's very diverse. And so you have companies that are readier to seize the challenge of the global market and readier to participate also in international networks, and others that are not as ready and that are not used to be in the let's say in the international arena. So as a cluster, for us, this is the main challenge. Having them on board, having them active in the international collaboration, But obviously, being in a meta cluster can also facilitate this because it's a kind of safety net for them. Let's say we start from this network, which is a kind of closed circle. We are friends. There is trust among us, and then can be a launch pad for these companies to be active really in the single market and then in the global market.
Thank you. Now, I know Eric has to leave us shortly, but while you're still here, Eric, let me come to you with a very specific question that Emma has asked. She is asking, are cluster organizations necessary to be a legal entity to participate in the I3-2B cap call? If the cluster is not a legal entity, in what role can they participate in the project? Quite a technical question, but we'd like to get your thoughts on it, please.
Well, you need to be a legal entity, but that is also, these are the general rules for I think for many of funding programs, EU funding programs. However, if we have an issue with that, because we have actually some examples of clusters being members of organizations, then if you don't have a legal entity as main organization, one way to go around it is to, for example, use one of the member organizations to sign up to the call, and then within the consortium, you can find ways to assign staff to the coordinating organization. So that will be there are ways to do it, but we need to have a legal entity indeed to sign up for this EU funding scheme.
So the answer, Emma, yes, in fact, for the rules, you do need to be a legal entity, but there are ways to get to know other members. And those members, they can find lists online, or is there somewhere we can direct people to go that we could perhaps share a link, Eric?
Well, if you go to the links in my presentation, there's the links to the funding and tenders portal where there is a partnership, let's say, a database. However, I suggest, because this is a bit more anonymous, to go through the community of practice, the specialization community of practice, where many clusters are members, and which is also for us a very rich pool of partnerships and building consortia for applications. So I would really encourage you to be in touch with those guys.
For that, thank you, Eric. That's very useful. And have you any final thoughts to our panelists as we've been discussing before we let you go?
Yes, I would like to emphasize that we need also you guys, I mean, the clusters and related partnerships to make the case for the I3 instrument. I think we are a new kid on the block in the EU funding landscape. Marek mentioned the context. It's quite competitive. I mean, we are looking, at making budgets more effective. And I truly believe, and we are on it now, in terms of impact analysis, that this I3 instrument as a netted value to the funding landscape and will help lesser regions, but also all Europe to become more competitive and to focus on their key strengths and their key smart specialized areas. So thank you for supporting us and yourself.
Thank you, Eric, and I'm sure the panelists and indeed all the attendees are pleased to hear that they're part of making Europe more resilient. Maurizio, let me come back to you because we were talking about challenges in running meta clusters, but I'm also interested in the challenges in setting them up and how important it is to avoid any pitfalls from the early stages so that everything runs smoothly from the get-go.
Not easy at all. Well, it is the first important thing is to have a good partnership. So to select the good friends, as Giovanni said, the good initial partners, to have a small group of entities, organizations that are well into the sector. So they already know about networks at European level. They know about the sector, they know about the policies. So together with this group of selected partners, it will be easier to set up the meta cluster and spread out at European level and connect with other networks, with other existing entities, and put them together little by little, because it is not in one day you can contact every single enterprise in the sector. But you grow up from a nucleus, from a small group, and then work to extend and to make understand, as Giovanni said, to make understand the benefits and involve more and more people when they understand it is good to be in a European network.
Erasmia, you got something to add?
Yes. I think that the challenges are really to have a shared vision, to trust each other, and to have a constant and clear communication within the meta cluster members. And you know what? This does not happen overnight. It's a process, and somehow you have to prepare the grounds to set up a meta cluster. And our experience is that we were lucky enough to have this time and the funding to prepare the meta cluster. Silicon Europe Alliance is an outcome of an FP7 European project, right? And we had plenty of time to prepare to create the meta cluster. And during 3 years, we had time to set our goals and to see how we are going to deploy the action to reach our goal. And the goals of Silicon Europe project, the FP7 project, was to foster cluster collaboration between the major cluster on micro and nanoelectronics. One of the goals was to contribute to the strategy to regain Europe's leading position on the global microelectronics and nanoelectronics market, and to prepare a sustainable cluster cooperation. So we had plenty of time to do that, 3 years, and the funding, right? And today, and I think it was all worth it, because today Silicon Europe Alliance is alive and is serving the CHIPS Act goals, objectives. And let me take an example, a very concrete example. As part of the CHIPS for Europe initiative, there is a call, for creating one competence center in semiconductor in each member state in order to promote the use of semiconductor technology, to provide access for the SME to design and pilot line facilities. And the CHIP GU will support the networking and collaboration of competence centers in semiconductors, with a goal to set a European network of competence centers, creating corridors of excellence with complementary expertise and knowledge, services and facilities, connecting different ecosystems together. And it's exactly because, we know how to work together, that Silicon Europe Alliance will be instrumental in implementing the European network of competence center. And just as an information, a lot of our members are in the process of structuring this competence center in their respective countries. And because we trust each other, we know how to work together, it's going to be easier to implement this network of competence centers. So just an example.
Thank you. You've obviously sparked some thoughts in your fellow panelists. I see Monse and Thomas both have their hands raised. Monse, you were first, so let's have a build on what Erasmia.
Yeah. Thank you. And very quickly, not to repeat what has already been said, which are perfectly aligned challenges that we might also find in our network of clusters. We are a network of about 50 clusters across Europe and associated members from other regions in the world. And the challenges for us, we have been there since 2006. We've been growing in the number of clusters and members of our network. And probably one of the challenges that I might also add to the one said is being able to be sustainable as a network. Being sustainable because sometimes the role that meta clusters, not even clusters, we have to defend the role of clusters sometimes in our own regions, and then defend the role of meta clusters or cluster networks on a broader scale. But it's about providing these outcomes, making them visible, this pathway of change, making this visible for everybody that is connected, finding this balance. And it goes hand in hand with having a strong team also working as meta cluster managers or managing the meta cluster on all directions, from the communication perspective, from the managerial perspective, from the projects that we participate in perspective. Some of the team members in the Council of European Regions, further to the cluster members, are also in this cluster talks today. So I think this is very important. This is you need to devote some of those resources to that, because this keeps the meta cluster alive and influencing around. So, and also being able to participate in this kind of projects. We have been, some of our partners submitted an I3. We have, we're waiting results. We have also some of our clusters are also members of one of the regional innovation valleys that has just been invited to sign grant agreement. So these things can only occur if you have strong people working from the managerial aspect of a cluster organization, because otherwise you are losing opportunities. You have to identify them and be very bold at going after them as well.
Thomas, as well, you have a point to make.
Yes, thank you very much. So Monse said most of what I wanted to say too. So in our case, we also started like who was it? Giovanni? No, Mauricio, I think, with some friends. So with 8 friends in 2017, and we applied also for project European Strategic Cluster Partnership project at that time. And within this project, we opened to other members. And when we opened and sent the invitations to other clusters, the network skipped from 8 members to 20 members in something like 10 days. So there was a huge interest in joining. Yes, starting with a small group and then building on that is very important. But I think it's also important to give these newcomers possibility to design the meta cluster and the orientation of the cluster. So you don't have, if you come with some kind of fixed ideas and then now you have to do this, then it's not working. That's the first thing. Second thing is what Asma just said. You need some kind of meta cluster management. This needs money, and meta clusters are even more difficult to get funded beside the membership fees than clusters, who often have some kind of public funding. So this is a real challenge for meta clusters, in my point of view. You also need a kind of European challenge. Topic subject challenge. So automotive is European, chips, digital is European. If you have some kind of very local activity, then probably meta clustering is less interesting than if you can address together these big challenges. And then what's true is once the network is working, you need some kind of dedicated resources in the clusters to contribute to the meta network. So if it's only in the meta network that's doing something and there's nothing coming back from the and there's no input from the members, then it's also very difficult to run a meta cluster. Thanks.
Well, indeed, that was one of my questions, was how to keep members engaged and how important is that? And obviously what you're saying is it is particularly important. Maurizio, let me put a question to you. It's come in through the chat from Christopher Wolf, asking, in contrast to a regional cluster, what are the extra challenges in collaborating or running, I suppose, a meta cluster?
It depends on the perspective. I mean, if the question is for an enterprise, what is the? I think I imagine this is the. So for a single enterprise or a member, how what is the benefit? Well, the benefit is to have a larger network and to receive knowledge, not only from the regional cluster, but from a network of clusters. So we can provide know-how and transfer knowledge from an experience made in Spain, for example, or in Germany, to a small Italian company. And this is valuable because especially we are dealing with sustainability, so green and social and digital innovation. So we are supporting with best practices taken from other countries, and we propose them to local enterprises. So the benefit is about knowledge and about also being, maybe they don't perceive very well that they are in such a large network because they are linked to the regional cluster, but they receive anyhow a benefit from being in a meta cluster.
Marek, if I may bring you in before we go back and have a look at the results of the overall Slido, because I see some questions, similar questions in the chat, and asking just what kind of form can a meta cluster take, if there's any sort of methodology that people should think about in setting it up. What sort of advice can you give people?
That's a good question. If there's a manual, no, there's no manual for this. I think this is all under development, and actually we need to build on. And I'm happy to have Thomas Erasmia here and Montse, because on lessons learned, I think this is good suggestions, and thank you very much for the suggestions. This is in view of playing for clusters the role in strengthening EU value chains. I think this could be something very useful, without making it too bureaucratic, as we don't want this, and things are developing bottom up. And it's true, Erasmus said that it was thanks to framework program, but at the end of the day, it was as well the activity and willingness of the group of being grouped with a certain challenge. And I believe we have Euro clusters, and we believe from some of those Euro clusters we have already signals that they will develop meta clusters. The example of the creative industries here, no? But I saw Thomas wanted to mention something as well.
Yes, thank you, Marek. Yes, somehow I forgot what I wanted to say before. Sorry, just going back.
If it comes back to you, Thomas, just jump in or raise your hand again. Montse, you have a point you want to make.
And thank you, because we have Marek also now on the screen again. I want to stress that we are also very happy with the outcomes that we got from our Euro clusters, that some of our partners and CIBER actually is also in. So because we were able to provide this cascade funding, and an example, you mentioned Vanguard. One of the companies that got a cascade funding with our Euro clusters by Oman was, now I'm today currently in Ghent in an event of Vanguard. And we were able to bring one of those companies and connect with Vanguard network. So this means that we are actively working on this, making this fabric of SMEs across Europe stronger and better connected. And that is, I have to say that Euro clusters for us was an amazing instrument on that regard.
Thank you. Perhaps, Nina, if feasible, could we have a look at that final position of the second Slido? So what are the challenges? English apparently is one of the biggest challenges, but building relationships across borders, commitment, cultural differences. I presume English is there as a relevance to language differences. Clear common goals and benefits, coordination, sustainability, funding, all of those things. Identifying common interests involving those associations in an active way. Political cooperation also there coming up. SMEs, I presume just keeping SMEs in mind if you're dealing with bigger companies. And also some are saying financial sustainability, as always, but a few different issues there. Not necessarily one clear theme, I think, coming out of the challenges, which is in contrast to what we saw with the results from the benefits, where it was very clear there were some big benefits that people were seeing. So thank you very much, everyone, for answering that, Slido. I'd like to come back to the panel overall and do a full round from all of you once again, asking what are your top tips for someone who is creating a meta cluster, bearing in mind that we seem to have very strong views on the benefits, but that the challenges seem, just based on that very non-scientific poll, to be quite diverse. And perhaps that's a reflection of the different places that people come from, the different types of clusters we're talking about. As we said earlier, that there's a big difference between perhaps the health and sciences sector and the creative sector. So perhaps that's why we're seeing different challenges. But let me come around once again. Erasmia, let me start with you. What's your top tip for those who want to establish a new meta cluster?
Yes, I think that probably I already answered somehow to this question, and really to have a shared vision and objective, right? This is so important to know what the meta cluster is going to deal about, what is it going to be the subject of activities, to be able to put together a joint action plan. We need people who would like to dedicate time to the cluster. And this is really time consuming, right? Because we are all very busy in our day-to-day activities, but we need to think broader, to have time to give to the cluster, to the meta cluster. So it's very, very important. To build, to have a very clear and constant communication with the member of the cluster, and that's pretty much it.
That's quite a mouthful.
Right, yeah.
I just want to say, I do see one of our attendees, Lucia Steele, has her hand raised. Perhaps Nina or the back end could get in touch with Lucia, see if she has something she wants to add at this stage. Before I go to Giovanni, your top tips.
Yeah, what I would like to say is that building meta cluster is a challenge and can not be. You need to check the commitment of the participants, because it's it's not a present given for free. You need to invest your time and resources, as everyone has said so far. So selling the idea that this is made on a voluntary base probably is a big mistake. So you need to avoid that. You need to stress the fact that there is a lot of works to be done. And so if you are ready for the challenge, then you are in. Otherwise, it's better that you wait a bit. Choose your friends.
Choose your friends and choose your time appropriately as well. Prepare. Lucia Sel, I see Lucia, you're promoted. Would you like, Lucia, to give us your thoughts? You had a comment or a question to our panel?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the word. And I would like to share a bit of the experience, the Austrian experience, where in clusterings we're having more than 25 years of experience in all regions. So an initiative that started quite a long time ago was to bring together regions to fund a cluster together. So a particular example is that of the plastics clusters, which is it was initially Lower Austria and Upper Austria, or the Green Tech Valley that is in the region of Styria, but also in the region of Carinthia. So what happened is that thanks to the political will and cooperation at regional level among the policymakers, there was an agreement reached to, let's say, to build what we call a meta cluster as well, but where actually on the outside, the visibility is just in one name. So there is no Lower Austrian plastics clusters and Upper Austrian plastics cluster, but that is just one plastics cluster with two offices. And as well, and I think here is the interesting part that might be inspiring also for the policymakers in the cluster landscape, is that they are supporting the cluster, the meta cluster, with dedicated funding, so that companies can cooperate one company from Upper Austria with one company from Lower Austria. They do not need to apply for different regional funding schemes to get into a cooperation project, but all is being aligned at the policy level. And I think this brings an enormous, let's say, potential for the companies to benefit with less bureaucracy, less challenging in accessing different types of funding. And at the same time, it creates, let's say, the visibility, the synergies, the economies of scale in the positioning of the cluster, both in the region and outside. What I would like to emphasize is as well that the services are as well the same. So it's about sharing the services each cluster offers and making it available for all the members, whether they're located in one region or another. So this is something that's an additional benefit, because in one office may offer one thing, another office another one, but it doesn't make any difference for the company. In the end, keeping as well in mind the added value for the companies. I've seen this as well, if I remember, as well in Berlin, city of Berlin, region of Brandenburg. So I think there is a potential to look as well of creating this political willingness to streamline the funding, the regional fundings, a bit like Innovation Express a long time ago, another story, creating this critical mass and opening up particularly for the companies new opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucia, and thank you for jumping in. I'm going to give the floor to Thomas next before we come to Lucas, because Thomas, I know you're on a tight deadline.
Thank you, Jennifer. Yes, I just wanted to come back to this question. So I fully agree. Start small with some clusters you already know. If you want to set up this kind of cluster, a meta cluster, I think this is a very good idea, and then open it to others when you already have some kind of idea about what are the benefits and what could be a strategy and so on. But then discuss this with newcomers together. So this is for me the main challenge on creating. Beside, perhaps, if you need a legal entity, is to find a good legal entity, because most clusters are associations, but the national laws always have some kind of impact. So that's why EACN is not a legal entity today, because we couldn't find a good legal solution, and a European association status would be fine without any national conditions. And then when it's running, it's important not only to include cluster managers from your members, but also the cluster staff. And that's, in my point of view, much more important and much more difficult than to convince a cluster manager to participate, because time is generally not coming from the cluster manager, but from some of the members, or from some of the staffs of the clusters. And that's very, very important, and that's much more difficult, and it's very much relational. So you need to know these people. Personal contacts are important too. Thanks.
Thank you, Thomas, as well for joining the panel and sharing your wisdom and insights over the last hour or so. We do appreciate it very much.
I have to leave. I'm sorry. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Lukas Gorecki, Lukas, tell us what your thoughts, your comments are. You raised a hand, so you wanted to join in the conversation.
Yes, good morning. I hope you hear me well. My name is Łukasz. I'm from Poland. I'm in charge of clusters, Silesia Automotive and Advanced Manufacturing. And I would like to share with you my point of view of participating in this kind of network, because we are the biggest automotive cluster initiative in Poland, 220 members, and we are a proudly member of the European Automotive Cluster Network. I feel a little bit like a founder of this network, because I've been engaged in the project that created the network. And that's what I would like to emphasize, that I feel a huge value to be a partner, to be a member of this network. This gives us a lot of the sharing information about the sector in different countries, a lot of good practices from the different managers of the more developed developed clusters than we are. So we learn a lot from participating in this European Automotive Cluster Network. But that's what we are doing in the Polish level, I would like to emphasize, because we are also collaborating between clusters. We have very strong Polish Cluster Association, about 30 clusters from different sectors. The very huge value of collaborating there. This is also some kind of platform for sharing information with our government to have the input for the cluster policy in Poland. But also sharing the best practices between the cluster managers. But that's what we did in the last year is also maybe interesting because we started to tighten the collaboration between automotive clusters in Poland. We did the first step. I can't share any spectacular success right now with you, but that's what is important, that we feel that it is important for us to create this network of automotive clusters, especially that automotive industry today is a very crucial moment. And we know that this collaboration build the potential and we can support our cluster members by building this collaboration between Polish automotive clusters. So thank you very much. That's all from me.
Thank you, Łukasz, and hopefully you'll be back with success stories in the future. You can tell us about it on our Wednesday morning.
Thank you.
Maurizio, a final word from you on any top tips, any bit of advice you want to leave people with.
I invite everyone to our conference where we have this special panel exactly on meta clusters. And thank you very much for all these inputs you have given to us. I don't want to prolong anymore. It shows that there is an appetite for these discussions and for creating meta clusters in the EU. So this is under construction, under development in the policy point of view. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marek. Maurizio, any final words from you? Maurizio, perhaps you can go first and then I'll give the floor to Monse.
Yeah,
No,
sorry. No, Maurizio, please.
Okay, sorry. No, just quickly, besides the good partners, the financial issue is very important, and the Eurocluster call was, for example, a very good input to start and kick off new meta clusters. So it is very important to start with applying in a European call, for example, or to find the initial resources in order to set up and organize the whole cluster. That's it.
Thank you. Monse, your final word goes to you.
Yeah, important tips. Having a goal, a strategy, a joint strategy, a sustainability plan, either if you start as a project or you will not, I mean, you're not, but a sustainability plan. Like I said, expert managing team and community building, commitment from everybody. These are things that we've been discussing with the members. This is very important for everybody, community building and commitment.
Thank you. That is a very positive note to end on. Thank you all the speakers for joining us today. Thank you everyone for the activity in the chat and your questions, particularly those who switched their cameras on to add to the conversation. There's been lots of links shared in the chat and you can go back and check that out. Of course, remember, of course, as always, this event has been recorded, so you can go and see that in the future on the ECCP. Register for the next talks. I should remind you that the next talk is the takeaways from the European Cluster Conference. So hopefully many of you will make it to Brussels, where I am, for that conference. And the next chat on our Wednesday morning is on the 15th of May. So remember, you can look out for that, and there will be more to come. Information will be shared in due course. You can continue the discussion. Go to the European Cluster Collaboration Platform, and the general discussion group is on LinkedIn. So you can just go straight there. You will see the link in the chat as well if you want to just click directly on that. Do visit the ECCP website, and of course, follow on social media. You can go to clustercollaboration.eu for the formal actual website. You can go to X or Twitter, it's clusters_EU, and on LinkedIn, it's the European Cluster Collaboration Platform. And if you are going to go on socials, remember to use the all-important hashtags EU Cluster Talks or ECCP, so that those who are in attendance can find you and share their thoughts. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful Wednesday, We're back online on the 15th of May, but also don't forget the in-person conference in the meantime. Have a great day.